So today's tutorial is going to basically cover how we can make these really nice gift pouches. They are of course coming in two sizes. You have a smaller size and then we have the larger size. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the larger sized one. This one had a bit of a patchwork, and this was just a quick solution because I had cut this shape incorrectly, so I just added a patchwork to kind of like save it and salvage it. But yeah, I mean, I thought that kind of actually looked really nice. And if you like any of these fabrics, I'm going to link them in the description box below. This is a Kona cotton, and this one is an Essex fabric by Robert Kaufman. This is also a Robert Kaufman sort of metallic print, but I'll put that down in the shopping link below if you want exactly, in the description box below. So if you want exactly what you see, you can get that. Now all of these embroidery motifs, the stars, the mosque, the text, it's part of our Ramadan and Eid embroidery bundles. I feel that if you watch this video, you can make a gift bag for absolutely any purpose, but because it's the season of Ramadan coming up shortly, we have featured this gift bag making process with these embroidery designs. All right, so we're going to be needing the outer fabric, which is for the bigger size bag. It's a 10 by 10 inch, and then you need the same for the back of the bag. This fabric is a little bit lightweight, so I have ironed on this is like a fusible interfacing. It's a very lightweight fusible interfacing, and I will put a link below on the type that I've used so that you guys can use the same. We always make sure when we are ironing the interfacing on the back that it is just a bit smaller than the fabric surface, because we just don't want the extras to come out from the side. Now I have gone ahead and already embroidered on this, but if you don't have an embroidery machine, you can keep it plain and you can make these plain gift bags, because they're still going to look really beautiful with the ribbon accents and whatever. Now if you have an embroidery machine, this is the 5-inch size. They come in 3 sizes. You have a 3-inch, a 5-inch, and a 7-inch. So if you want to even do tote bags or anything more, you can always size up on that. You're going to need the same size for the lining. So these are lined gift bags, and I'm using Kona cotton for this one. On the inside, Kona cotton, the beauty of this fabric, if you use Kona cotton on the outside as well, you don't need to per se put the fusible on it. So all depends on the weight of your fabric. If the fabric weight is very, very light, it's always good to add in a stabilizer. If it's not, then you don't need it. So this is going to be the same size, so 10 inches by 10 inches to make the big gift bag. For the small one, everything is 6.5 inches. All right, so just letting you know that we're not going to be stitching the small one today, but the process is the same. So if you like the size, 6.5 is like the size of my palm, and this one's a bit bigger, you can put more goodies inside this. Of course, we're going to be needing a couple of other things. I've got this nice organza ribbon for the tie-up. A lot of people like to use the same fabric and make their own ties out of it, but since this is a beginner tutorial, I think just find matching trims, and that's the way to go. We're going to need some sort of scissors. I'm going to use a friction pen at some point. These are amazing for marking because a little bit of friction and the marking goes away. I'm also going to be using painter's tape at some point, and I'll show you why. It's very specific for this color of fabric, specifically because you can't see the friction marking on this. So this kind of helps with some part of the sewing, and I'll let you know about it. Of course, to cut all of this, I've used a ruler. I have used a cutting mat, which is what this all is lying on, and I've also used a rotary cutter. I've already pre-cut this, I've already ironed this, I prepared the embroidery. So what I'm going to do right now for the rest of this tutorial is to show you how I sew all of this together. Most important thing, let me not forget, a lot of pins. They keep things together so that the lines and the seams match and everything comes out very well. Okay, now let's go to our sewing machine, and I'm going to show you the next step. LOL, did I say let's go to the sewing machine? Step number 1 is actually on the cutting mat. So you put your lining right sides together, guys, and what we're going to do is, for the lining of this bag, we're going to stitch all the way here, come here, stop, leave a nice gap, stitch all the way here and all the way to the top. That's the opening, so we don't stitch that together. All right, I'm going to pin and show you so you guys have a very clear understanding how that works. For the upper fabric, that is the outside of the bag, You're going to put right sides together. Don't worry about the fact that you won't be able to see your right sides for a bit. Right sides together, and we're going to stitch all the way through. No gaps, but we're going to leave one side open, which is going to be the top of the bag. Now, if you've done an embroidery, there is a definite top, so make sure that that's what you're going to leave open. And a very good way to make sure that you don't make a mistake in this is you always pin, and you pin in a way where it's very self-explanatory when it comes to sewing. So let me show you how we do that. So on the lining, I'm going to match the lines together and stick a pin. Bring that there. There we go. Stick another. And stick another here. So that's one side done. Now this is where I'm going to remember to add a gap, right? So it's the base. So all I do is I just put one pin here. Kind of put one pin sideways. So it's like a no-sew zone. And then I put one over here. So then I know when I'm stitching, even if I forget, that that's a no-sew zone. So I'll stitch till here, cut the thread, stitch from here onwards, and then come to this side. Just make sure that before you actually start to pin it, that you've actually cut these fabrics to the correct size, and that you have ironed it so that, you know, they are very evenly fitting together, and that you don't have to worry that anything is not matching. So I've done this for the lining. Now when it comes to the main fabric, that's the outside fabric, I'm just going to make sure that this is up. So that's the one that I'm not going to stitch. So I'm going to start from the side, pin, pin, and this one we just stitch all the way through, so we don't really worry about any no-sew zones. I like that terminology. And now that I've done this, we can now go next to the sewing machine and we can start stitching. I really like these flower head pins because they are thin enough for the machine needle to run over without any breakage. And I can say that with a lot of confidence because I've made so many bags and I've broken no needles. Let's go to the machine. All right, guys, I'm on a very high-end sewing machine today. This is the beast of all Berninas. So yes, it's going to make my stitching experience a lot more easier, but let me tell you guys how to set your machines up so that you know how to get the best sort of sewing results for this project. So I've already put my first fabric up here. It really helps that you use thread that's sort of a color that goes very well with your fabric because we don't want to see it through. What I recommend is you come to a straight stitch, drop your stitch length to 2.1 millimeters, all right? And right now I don't have a 1/4 inch foot, so I'm going to switch that on my machine. And I feel like the fact that I'm doing this with one hand is pretty cool. So the 37 is the 1/4 inch foot for the Bernina, but if you don't have a 1/4 inch foot, just sort of adjust your needle position with your you can usually always adjust needle positions, and you can sort of practice and measure your 1/4 inch. Some people also use some tapes to measure their 1/4 inch. There are lots of tricks and tricks around this, and I'm very sure some of our other YouTube videos where we sew with smaller machines, we cover these kinds of tips and tricks. So I recommend you go watch those, especially the one where we sewed our scrunchies. I'm very sure I showed how to put the tape on the stitch plate, and you can get that as well. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stitch all the way on this 2.1 stitch length, and I'm going to do that for this one. Then I'm going to show you what you're going to do for the lining, and then I'm going to show you the next step. I have something over here called the feeder fabric, and it's just a very good way for me to make sure that the fabric doesn't get fed into the stitch plate, which could happen sometimes. on a straight stitch. So I'm just making sure that stitch is fine, everything is okay, and then I start to feed this. Now since this is a 1/4 inch foot, if I match the edge of the fabric to the edge of the foot, it's going to be an even 1/4 inch. I don't have to check twice. That's the benefit of using a patchwork foot. I kind of feel that if you plan to do a lot of sewing, please find the patchwork foot for your sewing machine and have that in, because it just makes it so much easier for you to stitch and get that seam allowance. Almost every sewing project has a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if you're a beginner and you're not very sure, my eye gaze is literally, I'm gonna bring the camera this side so you can have a look. When I'm sewing, I'm not looking at my needle. I'm actually looking at the edge of the fabric and that it lines with the edge of the foot. As long as I'm making sure that the fabric feeds that way, the needle, the machine is gonna do its job. You're gonna get that perfect 1/4 inch. I sew over the needle and it doesn't matter. I've actually kept the needle in the down position so that I can easily turn the fabric using my knee lift, and nothing moves. And now I just stitch straight across this side as well. Stop, turn, and one more to go. You can back stitch and then you can cut. So this is done. I can pull out the pins. I just make sure everything's fine. And what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to take the lining. Same thing. So I will meet you after I finish sewing this. But just remember that we skip this side. This is the no-sew zone. So I'm going to stitch here, come here, jump over here, and then finish it. And then I will meet you back at the cutting table. So here we have it, guys. We've got two identical sewn pieces together, but one has a hole in the middle. Kind of like polo. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a ruler, and this is the bottom part, okay? We're going to be measuring a 1 inch square. You see how I got that? I'm going to just zoom in so you guys can see this a little bit better. Okay, so this is the bottom corner, and I'm literally placing this 1 inch grid here. So that's 1 inch, including the seam allowance, all right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my friction pen and I'm going to draw a mark. Now, there are people who pinch and sew these triangles together. I'm just so unsuccessful with getting that perfect seam matching. So the drawing the square thing becomes a lot easier for me, okay? So that's one. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other corner. So again, you just have to place this here. So I know this is my 1 inch. Stop there. And so from this point, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to get my scissor and I'm going to cut along what I just drew. And on the other side. Oops, that was not very accurate. So let me just cut this part out. And then here. All right, so let's do the same thing that we did for this on this one as well. All right, now because I've ironed fusing, it's easy for me to see a mark on it. But if you're not able to do that, I would suggest on a darker fabric, use like a white chalk. You're going to be able to see your stitch lines better. All right, so again, 1 inch. And Okay, so now that I've done that for both of these pieces, here's what we're going to do next, all right? We're going to pinch. And you see there's a seam here and a seam here. Trust me, this makes more sense. Make them point the same direction, okay? I'll show you. There we go. Make them point the same direction, but the seam needs to match, and then you're going to just stick a pin right there, okay? So what we're going to do next is we're going to take this guy to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch along this. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and on this side, and on this side, and on this side. And what we're going to create as a result is we're going to have a nice base. That's around E wide, and your bag is now going to be able to have a base for you to put things, and it has better shape. So let's take this. I'm going to go ahead, pinch all of these, you know, butt the seams on the same direction, pin it, pin it, pin it, and I'll meet you at the machine, and then we're going to sew it. So we're at the machine, and the reason why I wanted the same sides to face each other is because I just feel like it's just a lot more flatter. Sometimes you'll find that if the seams nest opposite each other, it's flat. See what works for you. I've tested, and I find that with this project, it just makes more sense for the base, for the seams to be facing along the same direction. So basically, we're going to bring this down to the machine now, okay? I get my feeder fabric, my very reliable feeder fabric, and same process to just get started. I stitch, oops, that was fast. And now I just basically feed this guy along with it. All right, now again, edge of the fabric is going to be against the edge of the foot, so I'm getting a nice perfect 1/4 inch, and then we stitch all the way. It's a bit of a weird shape, so take your time with it. When you come to the end, we're going to back stitch, forward stitch, and then you can just cut. This has an automatic thread cutter, but otherwise you can just pull and cut as well. All right. So now the reason why I ask you guys to, the reason why I ask you guys to like do that whole exercise is that when you turn it inside out, see that mine's kind of almost accurate, but the idea is the more I practice making these bags, I want this seam and this seam to like match each other almost. Now this is the lining, so you don't have to be super specific on perfection and precision on a lining because you never see it. But I think these are good places for you to start practicing it, because I believe that maybe the first bags are going to be the most beautiful, and it could be bag number 5 where you start really getting the hang of it. But these are so simple, you can make about 3 to 4 bags in 1 hour, guaranteed, if everything is pre-cut. So I'm going to go ahead and do this even for the 2 base points of the outer fabric, and I'm going to meet you guys next at the cutting table. Guys, check this out. See, I got that. Can you see it? Can you see it? Gets there. You get there when you actually are a little bit more, like you practice more. So yay, I nailed it on the outer. Okay, so you can actually bring the outer fabric, completely turn it inside out for the next step. And you can already see that it's getting a really nice shape. We have got a lining and we've got a outer bag. This is the one that we're going to be turning inside out. All right. And we leave the lining part, so you can push it out. Thankfully, these corners are not super tight. Otherwise, I'd probably use a stiletto or something to really poke it out. I think that's fine. So this one is going to be the correct side on the out. But as for the lining, we're going to keep the seams outside, okay? So the next step, what we're going to do over here, is going to take this bag and put it inside the lining bag. All the way in. They're the same size, so it should totally fit inside quite snugly. All right, and at this point of time, you see the seams, push it in a way that they nest into each other, and then over here we're going to stick a pin, the pin, and then before I pin in the middle, I'm going to even stick a pin on the other side. So for me, the seams have to match. All right. It should be easy to match the seams because both the bags, the inner and the outer, are the same size. Okay, so now you can really push it in, make sure everything is fine. And I'm going to stick some more pins over here just because I want to evenly stitch it. right? So go ahead and do that, and then I'm gonna meet you back at the sewing machine, and we're gonna do the final finishing of this bag. You're literally almost there. It is a very simple stitch, and it is meant to be for people who are very new to sewing. You want to make something really cute that people appreciate. I really think these gift bags are, I don't know why I call them gift bags, but I think that you put a gift and give it to somebody with it. So these gift bags are really nice for absolutely anyone to receive. So here we go. Let's go to the sewing machine. So now I need to actually use the free arm of the machine. So I'm going to remove the plexiglass insert of this table, and I'm going to be placing the bag in such a way that the big bulk is under, so I can stitch and I'm not sewing the sides together. Now what's important is I actually like to start from the side and then end on the side, as opposed to starting from the middle and ending from the middle, because I kind of feel like that will the run over knotted stitches can be towards the sides. You don't see that. Now I'm going to be changing. I need to be doing a close to an edge stitch foot, so no longer 1/4 inch, but I wanted a seam allowance that's less than a 1/4 inch. So I'm changing it to an all-purpose foot, and I'm going to be positioning. I'm going to be positioning the needle all the way to the edge. So the seam allowance is now kind of like as close to an edge stitch or a 1/8 inch allowance. I think I'm working right now at a 1/8 inch allowance, all right? The rules are the same, my friends. I am definitely going to be making sure the fabric is along the edge, so that the edge of the needle, it's like the closest amount of seam allowance. We don't want this to be a mid stitch or a seam stitch. We want it to be like an edge stitch. All right, I hope that's very clear. So I'm just going to now stitch, and you're going to see how this moves as I sew around that free arm. It works pretty easy because the fabric, the feed dog just keeps moving the fabric, and we just keep going around. And because I've pinned everything, I don't even have to worry much. Guys, I've finished stitching along the top rim. Now I'm going to turn the bag inside out. And this is pretty much what it looks like. Before I push this lining in, look at that, it's pretty cool, right? Before I push this lining in, I'm just going to, you can see that it kind of automatically folds this way. So I'm just gonna like press them together and put a few pins, and I'm just going to stitch that shut. Some people like to hand sew it, but because it's a lining and it goes on the inside, I'm very okay just stitching it without any real thought, yeah? So I put the pin, and I hope you can see that really well. Definitely make sure you put a pin right outside the area where you want to start from, so you don't forget. You don't want a hole in your lining. So you can maintain the same stitch setting as we have before we turned over the bag, which is on the edge, which is perfect. Okay, so we put it here. I bring my feeder fabric back. And done. So now we just stuff the lining into the bag. Yeah. Now obviously you can see at this point of time that it needs to be very well pressed over here. So our next step is to go to the ironing table, and we're going to iron this so that it stays in place and we are able to secure the final shape of the bag. Then you're going to do a nice top stitch, and then we're going to add the cord. So I'll first show you something that I do with the ironing board right now. We use a nice little tool that kind of helps us get a very good iron. So I'm going to show that to you right now. So let's go to the ironing board. Hey guys, so here I am at the ironing board, and I have this product. It's called a tailor's ham. It's basically considered like an extremely stiff portable ironing board. I don't know what it is, but the fact that it's got this shape allows me to like snuggle the bag right there, and I'm able to easily press, oops, switch off the steam, press on it, and then just move it along sideways, and then press on it there as well. I'm going to link, we sell these really nice tailor hams in the store, and I'm going to link this tool inside the description box below. You can check it out. I'm even going to put the Amazon one, so even if you're not anywhere near us in Dubai, in the UAE, you can't buy it from the Classicals web store. You can definitely find it from the Amazon store. It's a tailor's ham by Dritz, and it's literally like, it serves the same purpose. The nice thing about this is that once you finish it, I did not iron this part. And the point of this is that once you finish it, it's got that nice flat look, which you've actually achieved by sort of manipulating it along each side. So you're not pressing one over the other, but you're sort of pressing it quite evenly across the surface, which I think is pretty cool. Now you could decide, like, I'm not so happy with this, I'm going to push it further down and iron it. Or if you're happy with it, I just look at the overall shape and I think, okay, I'm looking at the overall shape. I think I'm going to just press this down. But otherwise, I'm more or less quite happy with the way this has turned out. We're just going to add a cord now, and the bag is done. So I've placed the bag back into the free arm. And I'm going to be doing the same edge stitching as I've been doing for the previous step where we zip the lining together, right? Just make sure that in this stage that you, of course, start from a side. Don't start from the middle, because you don't want to see stitch overlay in the sort of prime area of the bag. And secondly, try to match the top stitch thread with the bag. So I have a gray which is very neutral, kind of blends very well with this top fabric. You don't want the stitch to be very visible, and you want it to be as close to the edge as possible. By doing this top stitch, you are fixing the lining officially within the bag, and it's not going to pop out. It's going to just look a lot nicer, and it's going to be very stable, which is all nice qualities for your gift bag. So let's just stitch this along the free arm. The lining, as you can see, it's very invisible, but it's a very nice bag. So now we're just gonna add the cord, and then we're gonna tie the bag shut, and we are done with this gift bag. And let me show you how we do the cording. It's a very simple step. We're first gonna go back to the cutting board, so let's go do that. This is the top of the bag, guys, and what I'm trying to make sure is, like, you can ballpark how you want to do this, and this is approximately where I want the lace to sit, right? So at this point, if you're a measurement person, you can always measure and see, and it looks like it's around 1.5 inches. So you could just measure 1.5 and draw a line. Now this is a very dark fabric, so it's very possible that you're gonna have to use a white colored marker. But here is my little tip and trick. So remember how I talked to you guys about the painter's tape? So what I've done is I have actually cut some painter's tape, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the approximate area where I want to put this this organza ribbon, and I just start by sort of placing the painter's tape, sorry, in a straight line. Right, and I have to just make sure it's even from the top. And what I'll do in the machine is I'm just going to stitch along this line. All right, then what I do over here is I'll also take another piece of painter's tape and I'll place it at the bottom. I'm just going to, of course, just measure it very, so this is pretty fat. I'm just going to quickly measure it, readjust it outside the camera, and I'll show you guys the final view before I go back to the machine. Alright guys, so this is basically how I've arranged the painter's tape. So you can see that the ribbon fits perfectly inside it, and I've got these two lines. So I'm just going to peel this off. I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm just going to stitch, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'll just sort of turn it backwards like this, and I don't know, do you find this method useful? So of course I will move the tape and I'll sort of match this. Let's see if this is something that makes sense to you to use if you don't have white chalk. You don't want to use white chalk. Now the reason why I don't want to use white chalk is not because I don't have any. It's only because I don't want to get into the sort of like, I don't want to start to sort of remove it out. I find it really difficult to remove white chalk. So unless you have like a air erasable white marker or something, this could be like a fun alternative. I mean, I like to try to use different ways to do things and see which works for me best, and then I will continue with that as my preferred way of sewing. Alright, so I've placed a 1D foot, guys, and if you can see where this line is, as long as the needle position is in the middle, the needle is going to fall exactly where that line is, and that's what's going to make sure that I'm just sort of, you know, in line with that stitch line that I'm trying to aim at. So I'm going to show you how this goes. So as long as I am sort of focusing on looking at this sort of dent on the foot, that line on the foot, I should be getting a very, very accurate stitch exactly where I need it to be. So now that I'm here, I'm going to cut and I'm going to join the tape later, yeah? So might as well just finish this. Hold on, I have some extra tape. So I've stitched the top. I'm now going to stitch for the bottom. Okay, so this is done. We'll just snip off any pieces of long thread. Okay, so guys, at this point, I'm just gonna have to remove it, and it just comes out because you've stitched within that allowance. And even if a little bit gets stuck, since it's like painter's tape, it's very easy to remove, so don't worry about it. You might not be able to see it, but these are where the 2 stitch lines are. I'm going to come to the side, to the seam side, okay, and I'm going to only between the 2 stitches, okay, I'm going to now remove the stitching between the seams there, okay. So you need a nice seam ripper. This is a bit of a tricky fabric to find that thread, but if you use normal cotton, I think it's easier. This one's got like 3-4 colors, so it's just a bit of a difficult thing to do, but not impossible. But you see, I got the thread there, and then I just pull it out. Okay, so now what's gonna happen is, guys, you're gonna have this opening that's made over here. You see that? Now this opening is through which we're going to feed the organza ribbon. So I'm going to do the same thing even on the other side, and I will meet you at the table where we're going to finally take a safety pin and pass that through, and I will show you how to finish making the bag. So to do this bit, I've taken approximately, this is like 30 inches of a string, okay? I always kind of feel that I can adjust the string to how I like it. So the way I do it is that the moment you open the bag, they kind of meet at the ends. So you can see here I've actually used a friction pen. I've just ironed it and it goes out. So I've drawn lines here. Here I did not draw lines, so it completely depends on your fabric. But when you pull it, I wanted it to be that because I felt that this length was very important, that I didn't want it to be super long. So what you'll see as I do today is as we adjust, and after we tie it, like after we pass the string through, we'll tie it, we adjust the length, and then we finalize the overall look. Your handy tool today is a safety pin, and you're going to fold the organza, put the pin through it. I'm using a very basic basting pin. I have to apologize for the nail, guys. I promise by the next video they're going to look so much nicer, but I'm really sorry it doesn't look so pretty right now, but it's just that part of the week where I haven't had the chance to go yet. Anyway, back to this. So find your opening, picking one side, and I'm actually going to put this guy inside that opening. And now, once I'm going to get him completely inside. From this point onwards, it's just a matter of fact of, so we sort of shrug, hold, and then we pull. Shrug, hold, and then we pull. And we pass him all the way through and let him come out from the same opening. So I really like this method, and there's so many ways for you to do cords for a drawstring bag. And I hope to cover the different methods in different tutorials moving forward on our Classic Quills YouTube channel. And I would like to take this moment to say that if you've been enjoying this tutorial so far, you've been watching thus far, and you're inspired to start sewing, don't think twice. It is such a fun hobby to pursue. It is so therapeutic, and you can definitely be part of our family by hitting the subscribe button, liking this video, commenting below on what you'd like to see next, so then I can put my brain around it and film another episode of whatever you'd like to see. All right. I mean, I think I'm trying to fill the void with promo talk on the page as I push this through. Right, so I've reached the end, and I pull this guy through. And all I do at this point is I try to, so be very careful, okay, because this guy can get lost inside. So very gently we tug, and we try to even both ends, so they're sort of even. Just a small little pull here. It's a bit of handling you gotta do, guys. until you find that they are the same, yeah? Then before we do the other side, what we're going to do is we're going to knot this side. So I already know that I'm going to, when it's loose, I already know that I'm going to like have the knot here. So I think I can just pull this guy a little bit more. And see, I almost lost this guy. There we go. So now I'm just going to knot over here. So do a double knot, and it's just going to hold your one side. All right, so now we can even it out, and I can cut that later on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take another piece of organza and do the other side, and I'll meet you guys right at the end. Alright guys, so this is what it kind of looks like. So I'm going to just basically take this moment to make sure that the ends are sort of evenly trimmed. So I snip here, and I snip here, and guess what? That was the last step. Oh, this is actually a really pretty one. I love the embroidery as well. But there we go. Got a really nice gift bag and a really nice collection of little goodie bags, and they're all in theme for the season of Ramadan. Well, I am based out of Dubai, so this is a very big deal for us over here in the Middle East. But yeah, I mean, just think about it. You can play with your own colors. You can do something for Easter. You can put bunny rabbit embroideries on it or appliques on it. You can just do plain colored ones. You can do anything, because gift bags, it's just a really nice way of doing something personalized. It looks cute. It's environment friendly, and the most important thing is it's really easy for somebody to work on if you're just relatively new to sewing. Now, if you look at all these different bags, you can see what all I've done. So you can work with size. You can work with different lining fabric on the inside. Like all of these have different lining fabrics on the inside. But this one over here, it's the same fabric on the inside as well. So you can play with it, right? You can do a small size. You can do a large size. You can add some patchwork, or you can just make it all in one color. But the idea is that it is just a very nice way for you to like use your fabric, get yourself behind a sewing machine, and make something really nice over an afternoon. So I think this project is 100% beginner friendly. Thumbs up. If you really enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like, subscribe, and be part of the Classic Worlds YouTube channel. I will look forward to seeing you at another tutorial. Definitely comment below on what you'd like to see next, so that we can get ourselves ready for you on those kinds of projects. Have a beautiful day of sewing, my friends. Aish over here, and signing out.